then have to come down the other side of the mountain once you hit the apex. So calibrate yourself and your expectations so you're not disappointed every morning you get up. Yesterday we met with the entire state hospital system, Dr. Zucker and our team. First time they were all in one place. And we said to the hospital system, look, what I just said to you, we're dealing with a war, we're dealing with a war we've never dealt with before. We need a totally different mindset and organizational transformation. We can't do business the way we have always done business. We need an unprecedented sense of cooperation, of flexibility, communication, and speed. And that's what we talked through yesterday, and we have to do it now. The healthcare system is one of those balkanized systems. It's like our state education system. It's like our criminal justice system. It's in place. It's fragmented. They have their own identities, their own associations. It's regionally organized. That all has to change. We don't have the ability to meet the capacity of our healthcare system as an entirety. That assumes the healthcare system is working as an entirety. That's not how the healthcare system is organized now. We have New York City hospitals, and then we have Long Island hospitals, and then we have Westchester hospitals, and then we have upstate hospitals. That has to go. Even in New York City, you have two basic hospital systems in New York City. You have the private hospitals, voluntary hospitals, about 160 of them, which are some of the finest healthcare institutions in the United States of America. This is Mount Sinai, Columbia Presbyterian, etc. Some of their members are also upstate, but they're the large private institutions. Greater New York Hospital Association. Ken Rasky runs that association of 160. You then have, in New York City, the public hospitals. The New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation. They are 11 public hospitals. They are a universe, and then you have the private hospitals as a separate universe. The 11 public hospitals are the hospitals that in many ways have always been under greater stress and greater need. We have they are a universe, and then you have the private hospitals as a separate universe. The 11 public hospitals are the hospitals that in many ways have always been under greater stress and greater need. We have to get those two systems, the private system and the public system in New York City, working together in a way they never did before. The distinction of private, public, that has to go out the window. We are one healthcare system. On top of that, it can't be the downstate hospitals and the upstate hospitals and the Long Island hospitals. When we talk about capacity of beds, when I say we now have 75,000 beds, that's a statewide number. That means those beds have to be available to the people in New York City or Nassau, even if those beds are up in Albany. So combining that whole system, and you're no longer just the Western New York hospitals or the Central New York hospitals. It's one coordinated system. It's much easier said than done, but we have to do it. On top of that, you have to overlay the new federal beds that came. The USNS Comfort at 1,000 beds. We're planning other federal facilities. These all have to be coordinated on top of the existing hospital network. So you see the organizational situation that we're dealing with. And let's be honest, and let's learn from the past. We know where we have to focus. We know where we're going to have problems in the next hospitals.
because the hospitals that have the least capacity, that have already been stressed, are the hospitals that are not going to be able to handle the additional load. That is a fact. You know which hospitals were struggling. We do reports all the time about the financial capacity of hospitals and what hospitals are in stronger versus weaker position. The hospitals that are in a weaker position are the hospitals that are going to suffer when they then carry an added burden. That was Elmhurst Hospital. It happened to be a public hospital. It happened to be a public hospital in a place of density. It happened to get overwhelmed. And that's what, then you saw the burden on the staff. You saw the emotion, you saw the stress. That can't happen. And that's what we talked about yesterday. And people said, well, Elmhurst isn't my responsibility. Elmhurst is a public hospital. The city runs it. I don't run it. It's New York City. It's not a private hospital. I don't care which link breaks in the chain. The chain is still broken. It doesn't matter which hospital, which link. Any link breaks, the chain breaks. The healthcare system is a chain. It breaks anywhere, it breaks everywhere. That has to be our mentality. We laid out a full plan on how to do facility development, how to move people among hospitals so nobody gets overloaded, shifting patients, shifting staff, shifting supplies. None of us have enough supplies. Okay, then let's pool our supplies and let's put them out to the people who need them. And just because one hospital happened to have found a vendor from China who delivered 5 million masks, let's share those masks. And we talked about that yesterday. We also talked again at length about ventilators, which is, everybody knows is a key piece of equipment, identifying all the ventilators in the state, who has them in a stockpile, who ordered them, who expects them to come in, and we'll have one stockpile of ventilators that we can distribute for everyone who needs them. We also talked about splitting of ventilators, because that's a technology that does exist. It's been used before. It's not ideal. You take one ventilator and it's used for 2 patients. The federal government is a partner in this, obviously. I spoke to the president again yesterday about this situation. I spoke to the vice president. I spoke to Jared Kushner. The White House has been very helpful. We have to get the federal agencies on the ground to understand how this operates, especially FEMA, because we have to be coordinated and people have to know what they're doing, and this is no time for anyone to be learning on the job, and we're going to be working through that today. PPE, same thing. We want to know what everybody has. One stockpile, we'll distribute it fairly. Testing. How do we get out? When does this end? This ends when we get a fast-track test, an at-home test, a 15-minute test, and people can then find out when they can go back to work because they're negative. We're working on additional testing. As I said, the Department of Health has a new test, but that's when this ends. We're also working on the new medications. We're leading the country in many of those developments. We have saliva testing now. We're working on the antibody testing, and we're working on the plasma testing at the same time. We put together a central coordinating team. It's going to be led by the Department of Health. Westchester's on it, Greater New York is on it, Haney's is on it, New York City is on it, Long Island is on it. If the federal government is going to participate, they have to be part of this team, because we have to know what we're doing, and I don't want FEMA coming in and blowing the coordination of what everyone is trying to do. The coordinating team is going to organize upstate, downstate transfers. set patient loads for hospitals, right? So if one hospital gets up near a overload capacity, let's call it, those hospitals start to send patients to other hospitals before they get up to their max within the New York City public hospital system, within the greater New York private system, and then among the different systems. Total different mentality, but we have to do it. We said two missions. One was hospital, second was individual responsibility. Individual responsibility is about discipline, it's about selflessness, and it's about being informed. The basic point is stay at home. The point is stay at home. I know it's hard to stay at home. And I know everyone thinks, I can go out and I can be smart and I won't get infected because it's me. I'm a superhero. It's not going to be me. That is not true. And it's not just about you. It's not just about your health and your life that you're playing with here, my friend. You can infect other
Nigga said my
people.
friend.
So I've been trying to communicate this many different ways for many days. We still see people coming out who don't need to be out. Even for essential workers, people have to be careful. And again, I've been trying to communicate that everyone is subject to this virus. It is the great equalizer. I don't care how smart, how rich, how powerful you think you are. I don't care how young, how old. This virus is the great equalizer. My brother Chris is positive for coronavirus, found out this morning. He is going to be fine. He's young, in good shape, strong. Not
So
as strong
his
as
brother
he
got
thinks, but,
coronavirus?
he will be fine.
Chris.
But there's a lesson in this. He's an
Christopher
essential
Cuomo?
worker, member of the press, so he's been
Yesterday.
out there. You go out there, the chance that you get infected
Oh,
is
shit.
very high. I spoke to
That's
him
why his
this
wife got him in the
morning,
basement?
and he's going to be quarantined in his basement.
Yeah.
He's just worried about his daughter and
This
his kids.
Joe got
He
like a...
hopes he didn't get them infected. You don't really know Chris. You see Chris, he has a show on 9 o'clock on CNN. But you just see one dimension, right? You see a person in his job.
Oh my
And
God,
in
pray
his
for
job,
Christopher
he's
Cuomo.
combative and he's argumentative and he's pushing people. But that's his job. That's really not who he is. He's a really sweet, beautiful guy. And he's my best friend. My father was always working, so it was always just me and Chris. And he's a lawyer also, Chris. He's a lawyer because growing up, the decision point came to
Oh
when he
my
wanted
God,
to
that's
work
so
in
sad, right?
And my father was a very strong personality. And my father basically suggested forcefully to Chris that he should be a lawyer. It was a different time and a different place, you know. Now, my daughters, Cara, who's here, and they all follow their individual stars. This is their destiny, which is right. If you had said to my father, I want to follow my individual star, he would say, yeah, you can follow your individual star right out that door. And that's what you just said. So Chris went to law school, but he never really had a desire to practice law. He calls me when he's about 26. He's at a law firm. And he said, I don't want to be a lawyer. I said, yeah, I know, but you are now a lawyer. You are. He said, yeah, but I don't want to be a lawyer. I said, what do you want to be? He said, I want to be a journalist. I said, you want to be a journalist? I said, it's too late. You're a lawyer, you have to pay law school bills, you didn't go to journalism school, it's too late. No, I think I can do it. And God bless him, he quit the law firm, went to work for Fox TV, which is a whole separate conversation in the house, And then worked his way up. He's at CNN. He does a beautiful job. But a sweet guy. And I was quarantined in the basement. But it's funny. Even the dogs won't come downstairs, he says. But he is concerned about his wife and his kids. But the reason I raise it is he's smart. He's social distancing, yes. But you wind up exposing yourself. People wind up exposing you, and then they find out they're positive a couple of days later. And I had a situation with Christopher 2 weeks ago that I even mentioned. My mother was at his house. And I said, that is a mistake. Now, my mother is in a different situation. She's older, and she's healthy, but I said, you can't have mom at the house. And he said, no, mom is lonely. She wants to be at the house. I feel bad. She's cooped up in the apartment. I said, yeah, I feel bad she's cooped up in the apartment too, but you bring her to your house, you expose her to a lot of things. You have the kids there, you have your wife there, you're coming and going, your wife is coming and going, and you can expose mom to the virus. And love is sometimes a little, needs to be a little smarter than just reactive. And we had a whole discussion. In truth, now he's informed, I'm informed. Was that dangerous? Was that not dangerous? So I went back to Dr. Zucker. I said, look, we have to tell people, what are the rules? How does this work? That's when I came up with Matilda's Law. And I said I named it for my mother. And it was very clear about people who are older and what they should be exposed to. My brother, that was 2 weeks ago, if my brother still had my mother at his house,
She will
again, out of love and comfort, and my mother wanted to be at the house anyway, by the way. She didn't want to be sitting at home in an apartment.
So sad.
So she would have been doing what she wanted to do. He would have been doing what he wanted to do. It would have seemed great and harmless, but now we'd have a much different situation. Because if he was exposed, chances are she may very well have been exposed. And then we would be looking at a different situation than just my brother sitting in his basement for 2 weeks. So think about that, right? My brother's smart. He was acting out of love. Luckily, we caught it early enough. But it's my family. It's your family. It's all of our families. And this virus is that insidious. And we have to keep that in mind. Keep in mind Matilda's Law. Remember who is vulnerable here and protect them. You want to go out and act stupid for yourself? That's one thing. But your stupid actions don't just affect you. You come home, you can infect someone else, and you can cause a serious
Remain indoors.
or even death.
Can't go outside for solitary exercise. Pre-screen all visitors and aides by taking their temperature. Do not visit households with multiple people. All vulnerable people should wear a mask when in the company of others.
Last point. There was nothing that I have said different since I started these briefings. And there's
We must do it together.
That is different since I've started these briefings. We know what to do. We just have to do it. It is individual discipline to stay at home. That's what it is. It's discipline. No social distancing. It's discipline. Well, I'm bored. I know. I'm bored. It's discipline. Making this healthcare system work, that's government skill, that's government performance. That's saying to that healthcare system, I don't care how it worked yesterday, I don't care whose turf this is, I don't care whose ego is involved, I'm sorry, we have to find a way to work a better way. It's time to say to that federal government and to FEMA and HHS, you have to learn how to do your job, and you have to learn how to do it quickly, because time is not our friend. It's about a social stamina. This is not 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. Okay? This is not going to be an Easter surprise. Understand that and have the stamina to deal with it. And it's unity. Let's help one another. New York needs help now. Yesterday I asked for healthcare workers from across the country to come here because we need help. We will pay you, and more importantly, we will return the favor. This is going to be a rolling wave across the country. New York, then it'll be Detroit, then it'll be New Orleans, then it will be California. If we were smart as a nation, come help us in New York. Get the equipment, get the training, get the experience, and then let's all go help the next place, and then the next place, and then the next place. That would be a smart national way of doing this and showing that unity. And unity meaning we're not, I know this is a political year and everything has a political backdrop, and Democrats want to criticize Republicans and Republicans want to criticize Democrats. Not now. Not now. There are no red states, there are no blue states. The virus doesn't attack and kill red Americans or blue Americans. It attacks all Americans. And keep that in mind, because there is a unifying wisdom in that. Any questions? Let's do on-topic questions first. If anyone has any questions on local issues, we'll do that afterwards.
How many extra healthcare workers are on the ground right now? Are all the New York workers who want to work on the ground? We're hearing of some people who are trying to apply and are in New York and they're not getting answers from the state about, any response about when that'll happen.
Yeah, well, let's remember what we said. We have now, a few days ago, we put out the question is, are all healthcare workers working? The problem is healthcare workers are working too much. They're overstressed, they're working too many shifts, they're afraid to go home, they may bring the virus home, they're under immense physical and emotional stress. We put out a request a couple of days ago to ask retirees to come forward. We have now about 78,000 people who said that they would help. God bless the state of New York and God bless humanity. We now are working with the hospitals, and we did this in the meeting yesterday also, sorting those 78,000 people by region and by expertise across the state. And we have a portal that Jim or Howard can explain, because we then have to link them up with the hospital, right? You don't need, we have a pool of 78,000, you then have to coordinate that with the hospital in that region with those skills. And that's what we're doing now. Jim, you want to mention?
Right, so today the portal will be launched and live. The 78,000 or so, we have to do some pre-checking. So we checked for licenses, discipline, and those people who didn't have a license or had disciplinary issues were taken out, so the hospitals could more easily access the workforce. As the governor said, they're broken down by region, by discipline, and now they can go in. And what we're trying to do is prioritize the availability of the portal to the hospitals that need it the most right now, who have that need some extra help in the field. But we're working very closely with the entire system, like the governor said, to make sure we're linking up those new healthcare workers to those new facilities. So it will be live today.
And is that connected with the out-of-state workers who are coming?
It's everyone. So what we're trying to do is prioritize the in-state workers, which we have by region, so we know the potential healthcare workers in every region of the state, where they are, what their status is. We want to get those people in first because they're here in New York. We want to prioritize actually the New York regional, downstate regional employees, because we know that they're closer to those facilities that are in need now, and we're going to need the upstate employees potentially later. And then we have the out-of-state employees that are potentially, we're trying to keep those folks close to. So looking at the folks from New Jersey, looking at the folks from Connecticut and other places there where they don't have to travel from long distances.
Getting those people on, are there any concerns about individuals who are who are elderly helping?
We are looking at age, and we're going through background. We have about 175 people doing backgrounds on every person who comes into the portal, and the hospitals we're working with as well will also do their own checks to make sure the person's up to it. So they may not be up to one job, they may actually be up to another job, so we're making sure we have some cross-coordination there as well. And some of the hospitals could potentially have some of these folks in needed areas by Thursday.
The figures that are coming in, have you any more new projections as to when the apex might hit in New York City and the state as a whole?
When does the new apex hit? That is the $64,000 question. We have literally 5 models that we look at. It's true to say almost no two are the same. The range on the apex is somewhere between, let's say, 7 to 21 days. If you look at all 5, it's 7 to 21 days from now. And look, Jesse, I say, this doesn't mean no good. What it is, 7 to 21, the range is too broad. Do I have 7 or do I have 3 weeks? There's all sorts of variables that they're looking at. You know, on one hand, you would think they would be able to tell because you have the China model, you have the South Korea data, etc. But then you have variables here. How effective is the social distancing? How many people are actually staying home? How does the density relate? So there are variables, but it goes from the apex estimate 7 to 21. That's not the only estimate that varies. They then vary on how many beds you would need, right? We have 53,000 beds statewide if we operated as a state. We mandated 50% more beds, so now we're up to 75,000 beds. All of them say you need more than the 75,000, and the high estimate is 140,000. The ventilator estimate among those projections goes from 10 to 40,000. Are those right, Jim? You remember, Howard?
Roughly 20 to 40,000 on most average projected. Correct. In addition to what we have.
You're going to talk about the hospitals and coordinating them. One of the executive orders that you signed actually would let you put in a receiver into some of these hospitals if they don't meet that 50% threshold or even go above that. Do you foresee having to do that, and what would that allow you and Dr. Zucker to do?
The hospitals have been cooperative. The question is, we have the ability to appoint a receiver if a hospital is not being cooperative. The hospitals have been cooperative. We put out that rule that you have to add 50% capacity. They all added 50% capacity. They've all responded. We're sending out a rule today that says, I want to know your stock, what you have in stock, what your stockpile is, what your inventory is, because we really need to share. You know, nobody has enough, so like everybody put everything into the middle in a pot and then we'll distribute it. We're doing that. It's not, Joe, going to be as much they're not listening. It's going to be their capacity level, right? You have, let's take downstate New York. You have about 170 hospitals. If we sat here 2 months ago, we could have graded almost all 170 hospitals. And you would have had some stronger and some weaker. As a general rule, the public hospitals would have been on the weaker spectrum, less financing, etc., history of being more troubled. You now put weight on all 170. Even if you put the equal amount of weight on all 170, you're going to see a different reaction in the hospital depending on the underlying strength of that hospital. You put a differentiated weight, well, you happen to be in Brooklyn and there happens to be more density in Brooklyn, and that hospital gets more weight, you'd get a different variable. But in general, what you're going to see is the hospitals that were stressed can't take the stress, right? It's not even a medical concept. The works with personalities too. The personalities who are having trouble dealing with stress are having more trouble dealing with this stress. So the health and hospital corporations, what I said to, which are the public hospitals, I said to the private hospitals, you have to help them. And we have to watch when they get up near capacity, transfer patients. Elmhurst got up to capacity. You had other public hospitals that had open beds. We have to get better and faster at transferring patients to other facilities, right? A perfect system, everybody's at 51%. Everybody's at 60%. Everybody's at 80%. Not some people are at 40% and some people are at 110%. That's not the way the system is organized right now. They all talk, they all have, but they're different fiefdoms, they're different systems, and that, you almost have to shock the system into actually saying, okay, we're really going to operate as one.
If you don't see them making those shifts, gives you the weight to go in and principally demanding it.
Yes, but look, no hospital is going to say, I want to be over capacity. It's just they didn't have the cooperation or the system to call someone up and say, I'm drowning, I need to have somebody else accept 150 patients. And that's going to have to be managed into the system. Because it's something we never did before. Because we've never been here, Normally you have beds that are hospitals fighting for patients. Because patients are revenue, right? So you never had a situation where they said, I'm going to send you patients. They wanted the patients. They wanted the revenues. So this is a much different situation. I'm sorry.
New York City area patients being transferred to upstate hospitals?
No. First, we have levels of sort of triage. First, we're going to try to bring upstate staff down to New York State hospitals. It's one of the requests we're going to make today. You have upstate hospitals that are nowhere near capacity. Send your staff down to New York City hospitals. Worst step, you're over capacity in all New York City hospitals. You've redistributed the load, you're still over capacity, then send people to the upstate hospital. Is that right, Howard?
And how does the staffing work with union issues with paying the staff? So you can make the decision about
It would all be voluntary. Well, we're all paying the cost, right? The hospitals are paying the cost, the state is paying the cost. And I said to them, look, frankly, we'll figure out the cost. Because this is about saving lives. And I'm not going to get, who pays the bill should not determine whether or not people live or die. So I said, do whatever we have to do to save lives, and then we'll figure out the bill afterwards.
You said that the state has 3,000 ICU beds. How much has that grown at this point? You have 2,700 people in the ICU so far, leaving 300 beds.
No, I said I needed 30,000.
Right, so how many do you
beds.
have now?
Well, that's an interesting question. We have ordered 17,000 from China. Yes. That we would pay for, roughly $25,000 each. By the way, anyone who says, oh, maybe you don't need that many ventilators. You're saying 30,000 ventilators. You don't need that many. You don't really believe you need that many. You know how you know I really, really believe that number? Because we are paying $25,000 per ventilator, and we are broke. And the last thing I want to do is buy a single ventilator that I don't need. The complexity with ventilators is we ordered 17,000 from China. So did California, so did Illinois, so did the federal government, so did Italy. And what's happening is China, the orders into China are very slow in coming out. Exactly how and why, we're not sure. It's just that they have such a tremendous demand. Of the 17,000, we only have a firm expectation on 2,500. Is that right, Kara? Yes. only have a firm expectation on 2,500.
When are those supposed to come in? When
They're supposed to come in over the next 2 weeks.
So that means that the ICU capacity will then increase by 2,500?
Yes. No, the ventilator capacity increases 2,500. An ICU bed in this situation is essentially a bed with oxygen and a ventilator. But you can't have an ICU bed in this situation without a ventilator.
To address the surge, if it's
Well,
2 weeks?
it depends if it's 6 weeks or 21 days, right? That's what we're dealing with. And you can't accelerate the orders anymore from China. When we go back and do a retrospective, and I don't want to do it now, but look at the bizarre situation we wind up in. Every state does its own purchasing. So New York is purchasing, California is purchasing, Illinois is purchasing. We're all trying to buy the same commodity, literally the same exact item. So you have 50 states competing to buy the same item. We all wind up bidding up each other and competing against each other, where you now literally will have a company call you up and say, well, California just outbid you. It's like being on eBay with 50 other states bidding on a ventilator. And you see the bid go up because California bid, Illinois bid, Florida bid, New York bids, California rebids. That's literally what we're doing. I mean, how inefficient. And then FEMA gets involved and FEMA starts bidding. And now FEMA is bidding on top of the 50. So FEMA is driving up the price. What sense does this make? The federal government, FEMA, should have been the purchasing agent, buy everything, and then allocate it by need to the states. Why would you create a situation where the 50 states are competing with each other and then the federal government through FEMA
That's crazy, right?
competes with the rest of it?
Non-coronavirus emergencies factor into these plans to better coordinate the healthcare system, presumably with first responders getting overwhelmed, heart attacks.
Oh, look, this is, we're learning lessons, necessity is the mother of invention. We're learning things here that, it's not that we're learning things here. Anyone could have told you a lot of these things, right? The situation I just explained with purchasing. Did you really have to learn that 50 states shouldn't compete against 50 states, and then FEMA shouldn't come in late and then compete with 50 states? It's not you had to go to the Harvard Kennedy School to learn this, right? Should you really have a hospital system in New York State where you have private hospitals, you have these struggling public hospitals, there's two separate systems, the upstate is separate, Long Island is separate. Shouldn't you have planned a comprehensive system? Yes, but the commercial barriers to that, the political barriers to that, were so intense that if you didn't have a disaster, an emergency, you couldn't break through them. The conversation I had with these hospital leaders yesterday in that room, if it was not for the coronavirus, I would have never made it out of that room. I mean, what I was saying was so antithetical to the foundation of the business of healthcare in this state, which, by the way, is a multi-billion-dollar business. It's right, it was common sense, but sometimes you need the emergency to force change that would be very, very difficult otherwise.
Again, are there specific efforts to shore up the capacity of the healthcare system to handle non-coronavirus related emergencies?
Sure. So the healthcare system is working on all those other areas as well, and regularly pretty much every day I've spoken to doctors and nurses who are working on the front lines, and all of those other patients, whether the person with the heart attack, the person with the stroke, the system is continuing to move forward. It is stressed, as the governor said. The system is stressed, but the patients are cared for. Those other emergencies are getting cared for as well. Just put a strain on the system.
Let me give you an analogy. If I said to you, look, I know normally you write for your outlet and then there are other outlets, but we have a situation and you're going to write and you have to give it to all the other outlets. What you write is no longer just for your publication. You have to give to all the other outlets because we don't have 10 people who can come. You have to write for everybody else. If I said that in the normal course of business, forget it. If it was an emergency and you were the only reporter there, then you would do it. And that's true in so many different situations. You know, you're violating basic commercial rules here, and business rules and practices, and I'm a local government and I'm in charge, and you know, to override all that garbage, you really need extraordinary times.
From the White House, what are states on your idea for ventilators to get sent to New York and then other hotspots? The Illinois governor was talking about it this weekend and said that there's questions about where the next hotspot will get the ventilators if that moves forward.
J.B. Pritzker, your Governor Pritzker, he's a good man, he's a good friend of mine, he does a beautiful job. You have he's right, you'll have curves, right? You'll have a New York curve, you'll have an Illinois curve, you'll have a New Orleans curve. How do you know the New York curve is going to end before the Illinois curve peaks? You don't. You don't for sure. You know, basically, there's going to be a spatial sequential factor, but you don't know that we're going to be effectively done before Illinois ramps up. So it can't be literally New York has all the equipment, Illinois has none, and then we run to Illinois with the equipment. It can't be that literal, but essentially it would work, right? And the alternative is also true. Not everybody should have to buy everything. Once we get through this and we have whatever we wind up with, 15,000 ventilators and 15,000 ventilator splitters and 1,100 BiPAPs, you know, if we can help someone else, let's help somebody else.
New York City police officers called in sick this morning. Are you worried about staffing of law enforcement in New York City? And conversely, would you consider sending the state police to help with that?
Oh, I'm worried about staffing. Yes, my word, yes. You're going to see it with healthcare workers. You're going to see it with for all first responders. Look, it's back to my brother Chris. Yeah, if you are out there, your chance of getting infected is very high. Yes, and then we'll do whatever we need to backfill. If we need state police, I would do that.
On ventilators, you did talk about forming like some sort of consortium with states. Is that still possible? Is that still doable?
What's happening, Nick, is it is almost impossible to buy a ventilator. To the extent anyone is successful in buying ventilators, FEMA basically came in and is now capturing the market. Because the ventilators are coming out of China, and FEMA basically bigfooted the states in China. So to the extent anyone is buying it, it's FEMA. And that's why the federal distribution is going to be so important, because they are the only ones. I can't buy a ventilator. I can't buy a ventilator. Whatever we're willing to pay, I can't buy a ventilator. So it really comes down to how the federal government distributes it, and that's why it's so important. Let's do someone who hasn't asked a question.
What happens when the state runs out of ventilators? When you decide to get some?
When the state runs out of ventilators, where do I decide to get some?
No. How will the state decide who gets ventilators? We're going to have to get too many patients that need them.
Well, first, I don't even want to think about that consequence. I want to do everything I can to have as many ventilators as we'll need.
7 days, I mean, develop some sort of...
7 to 21 days, no, there's no protocol. We're working to get as many ventilators. And we have now a number of options. We have, we're looking at all the ventilators all across the state. We are then redeploying anesthesia machines as ventilators by changing a vent. We're then doing this ventilator splitting, which effectively turns one ventilator into two by literally running 2 tubes. We're using, Northwell developed an idea to use a BiPAP machine. We've ordered 7,000 of those. So we're still in it. We're creative and we're working and figuring it out, and I still am hopeful that at the end of the day we have what we need.
Governor, I don't know if you consider this on topic, many people think it is. Do you plan on signing extension bills so that state employees will get paid on time?
I plan on signing a budget. Can the state employees, when we pass a budget, we pass a budget on time, the state employees get paid, right?
The controller currently has the legal authority to make the payments now, right? The payments that are due tomorrow and today, those are actually for payroll from 2 weeks ago. So the controller presently has the authority. They have a technical issue with their computer system that they need to deal with, but they have the authority to make those payments today. It has nothing to do with when the budget is passed. The budget is always passed on the 31st or the 1st of each year. So that is a controller's office issue.
Begins in the next fiscal year?
Yes, that's right. They have sufficient appropriation authority to make those payments presently.
It's going to be delayed though, because just the way the pay period fell this year, right?
No, it has nothing to do with how the pay period fell. They presently have the authority to do it. They presently have full legal authority and appropriation authority to make the payments.
Never not paid the state employees. Even when the budget was late. Yeah. No update. See how easy she is. Coming or it's not coming. You know where we are. You know, the numbers are what the numbers are. The numbers don't lie. The numbers are new alternatives. Federal government says they're going to provide funding. If they provide the funding, then the next few months we should have some additional money. But am I going to say to the people of the state, I believe the federal government is going to deliver money to the state government? Heard it before, and it didn't happen. So I'm not going to count on money that we don't have. Especially when the political process is the process that's supposed to deliver the money.
And it doesn't look like there's going to be a new relief bill anytime soon, at least by tomorrow. So what options are left now for the state when it comes to what spending is ultimately going to be cut in the budget?
Well, it's all sort of, it's interesting because it's all basically contingent. We have the budget, we do a budget on the projections we now have. If we get more funding, we increase the allocations. If we don't get more funding, we reduce the allocations. That's basically what the budget says, right? It's essentially honest and transparent in a way. I'm starting the year, I'm earning $15,000 a year. I don't know what I can pay you, because I don't know what I'll be earning as we go through the year. The boss tells me he's going to give me a raise. I don't know if I should believe him or not. Some people say there's going to be a cut. I don't really know. So here's the budget. I'm making $15,000. If I get a raise, I will give you the raise quarterly as I get it. If I get cut, I will give you less quarterly as I get cut. That's all you can do.
Legislature going to give you that authority? Have they
I don't know, let them come and cut a budget. How fast, you think, do you really believe that they want to come back here and cut the budget? I give them total authority to cut the budget. Come back, tell me to cut the budget.
Are you satisfied that the unemployment system is working as smoothly as you would like to see it?
No.
People are able to...
It is not. It is not working as smoothly as I would like to see it. It's compounding people's stress. You're unemployed, you're trying to get on some darn website, you can't get through the website. We have companies working on it. We have literally hundreds of people working on it. I apologize for the pain. It is must be infuriating to deal with. I am telling you, we have every technology company working on it. We're spending a lot of money. The site is so deluged that it keeps crashing because you literally have hundreds of thousands of people at any time trying to get on the site, and it continues to crash. Do you have any update on it? You, Rob? I like that shit.
And just the numbers, we usually get 50,000 calls a week. We got 1.2 million calls yesterday and 7.8 million calls last week. So that's the order of magnitude. But as the governor said, we have all the resources devoted to improving the system.
1.2 million calls.
You should return the other ones.
Well, you don't know unless you...
50,000 a week. Yesterday alone, 1.2 million. Last week, over 7 million. So that's the order of magnitude, and that's the volume that we're dealing with. But as the governor said, we're putting all the resources in to improve the system and be responsive.
23 guards and 14 inmates at state prisons who are positive for corona. But DOCS is not saying where those guards or where those inmates are. Is there a reason for that? That would seem to be counter to public safety in that.
I've never heard that, Jesse. I'll check. It's the first I've heard of this. Anyone, excuse me 1 second, anyone who hasn't asked a question or wants to ask a question?
Concerning eviction freezes and rent relief for people overall, I know that was largely intended for people in residential areas, but does that also extend to businesses like restaurants that may be renting?
We extended it to commercial.
We did, we extended it to commercial.
And how long is that?
You cannot be evicted for non-payment of rent, residential nor commercial, for 3 months. Again, we pick these intervals, and you can say they're somewhat random, but you know, when is it going to end? Nobody knows. Pick an interval, so we said 3 months. You can't be evicted, residential or commercial, for non-payment of rent for 90 days. On that basis, my daughters have stopped paying me rent. I'm not even sure that their finances have dropped significantly, but I think they're just taking advantage of the non-eviction order that I myself posted, and I resent it. But there's nothing I can do about it legally.
The minor who died of coronavirus. Do we know how old they were, what their underlying condition was? This is someone between the ages of 0 and 17, which is always a tough part.
Yes, the person had another underlying medical condition. Well, you know, I usually don't like to give out clinical information, but I can see why the complication of this virus would have caused, a problem for that individual.
Right.
They were minor.
Right, well, New York City Health Department puts that information out, but it's 0 to 17 years old. Were they a child, a teenager?
You know, you have health privacy laws that if the doctor doesn't want to, or if he wants to stay in his current occupation, he has to be a little careful.
Marijuana, is there any chance you'll be able to get a deal on that here?
Not likely.
What happened? It's just too much to deal with?
Too much, too little time.
What about the top line numbers for the budget? Like
Bail reform, we said, we've been working on bail reform is something we've talked about until we're blue in the face for 2 years. Yeah, well, you know, you covered it. So bail reform we have to get done. Last question, Zach. But you're going to share this, or we agree that you're going to share this reporting with all your colleagues before you post it.
Of course. Governor, what do you
love when they lie to me.
renters should do once your 90-day moratorium on evictions ends and they likely owe, several months of rent? Unemployment is obviously.
We'll deal with that when we get to it. I hear you. There has to be some smoothing. We have to finish the budget to tell you the size of the budget. Condition proceeding to knowing the size of the budget, finishing the budget.
Senior senator from New York, as you know, is a minority leader, pretty powerful guy in the Senate. Is it possible?
God will determine who is to blame. You and I just deal with the reality. The senior senator will say he is in the minority, which is true. The House is controlled by Democrats. We took a pounding on both bills. We did not get our fair share in what's called the FMAP bill, the Medicaid.
You notice how he says Democrats instead of saying by us, the Democrats?
Reimbursement, lowest percentage of aid of any state in the United States for this last bill, which was supposed to be providing funding for COVID, but we have the highest number of COVID cases, and we got the lowest percentage of funding. So they'll say politics. I see politics be damned in the middle of this. Thank you.
That was Governor Cuomo, ladies and gentlemen. Lana, come taste this. Come taste this. I think I'm doing something.
I answered. The answer is no. No, you're not thinking about it? That was just one word. I said no. Have you thought about it? No. Are you open to thinking about it? No. Might you think about it at some point? No. How can you know what you might think about at some point right now? Because I know what I might think.
So Chris Cuomo got the Rona. She said, I hope I didn't give it to the kids and Christina. That would make me feel worse than the illness. I am quarantined in my basement, which actually makes the rest of the family seem pleased. I'll do my show from here. We will all be this. That's yours. Yo, it's a cockroach. So this tweet came from Bill de Blasio, in which he said, "Since I'm encouraging New Yorkers to go on with your lives, plus get out of town despite coronavirus, I thought I will offer some suggestions. Here's the first. Through Thursday 3/5, go to the Trader film link. If The Wire was a true story, plus set in Italy, it will be this film." Wow, de Blasio. So 28 days ago, de Blasio was encouraging people to go to the. That's very irresponsible, sir. Numbers of New York City restaurants communities are working together to make sure health workers at the front lines battle against are getting meals. Clueless New Yorkers gathered to watch USNS Comfort arrive. So people gathered to look at the hospital ship arrive to the to New York. Mad people, Anna. So stupid.
Contacts, we're here for people like Allison, whose prescription just expired. No need to worry, Allison. With our online express exam, you can renew it like that. There, now that's better. Just call, go online, or download the app.
1-800-CONTACTS.
COVID in my hair, I have COVID on my face. We're dealing with an overwhelming need for PPE in a way that's unprecedented, right? So if we looked at like Italy and China, what they tell us to do, which is to gown up for every patient, make sure there are no breaches, even use a buddy to make sure that you're well protected. It's just not our capacity right now anywhere in America.
Some are given one N95 respirator per week. They are not meant to be reused. We're trying to find ways to reuse them because the supply chain is short. People are, baking them to try to kill virus. They're subjecting them to UV light.
The federal government started making suggestions about how to protect yourself with no mask, like using a bandana, right? Which is an absurd suggestion. It's not protective. It doesn't do what it needs to do. It puts medical workers at risk.
Really, I'm calling on all hospitals. I'm begging them to do more. And to the CDC, that please reconsider what you are telling us because it's costing people's lives.
Places are running out of ventilators. There's shortages of masks. The disconnect between what you might be hearing at a press briefing and what I'm hearing at sign out every single day in the emergency department, that chasm couldn't be wider.
I don't believe you need 40,000 or 30,000 ventilators. You go into major hospitals sometimes, they'll have 2 ventilators.
We're delivering millions and millions of different products, and all we do is hear that, can you get some more? Well, it's not, I don't think it's hoarding, I think it's maybe worse.
We need the tools and the resources to do our jobs, and we don't have them.
We're going to need billions of masks across America.
We need some help, and we need it right now.
Everyone is scared. It's a lot harder to save your patient's lives when you're also having to save your own.
I feel like we've been at war for 2 years, and we've just started with this epidemic.
We're going to have an entire healthcare workforce that is going to have gone to war. And so the thing I think about at night now is how to deal with that in the moment, to know that the decisions that we're going to be forced to make are decisions being forced upon us.
Don't make the plan B the plan A and say that that's the best standard. Not while my colleagues are getting sick. It really makes me angry. It makes me feel like, are we forgotten?
Nana, what are we eating?
News about potentially promising though so far scientifically unproven drugs to combat coronavirus. On Sunday, the FDA giving emergency authorization to add 2 anti-malarial medications to the national stockpile. Chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine to hospitals.
Trump got his wish.
Reports suggest that these drugs may offer some benefit. Already, hospitals and doctors have been prescribing the medication.
You're doing that Putin shit. Putin say those.
Minnesota. James Conisaro, who is still in the hospital, started treatments last week.
Thursday morning.
He's like, so what's the danger? They could die? And what happens if we don't do nothing? They could die? Okay.
Hydroxychloroquine.
I woke up at midnight, just about midnight on Thursday night, feeling something was different. I felt like, all right, the body aches aren't so much. I'm not coughing as much.
So far, there is no clinical proof that the anti-malarials work, but the FDA says it is worth the risk to use them for patients in serious condition. Also in the pipeline, but still not scientifically proven, is transfusing plasma from coronavirus survivors into infected patients. Houston's Methodist Hospital is studying it as a treatment.
The idea is that plasma may have parts of the immune system, like antibodies, against the COVID-19 virus that could potentially help patients.
But the most long-term hope is being placed in the development of a vaccine. Today, Johnson & Johnson says it has a promising possibility.
This is like a moonshot for us at Johnson & Johnson. What would usually take 5 to 7 years, we expect to be able to accomplish in 5 to 7 months.
Johnson & Johnson's possible vaccine will go through rigorous trials, but the company says that in the coming days, it's going to start production so that if and when they get the approval they need, it will be ready to go.
With you today, this morning, in collaboration with Facebook, we are focusing on your money.
Tomorrow, April 1st, big day on the calendar. For a lot of folks, that means the bills are due, especially rent, car payments, that kind of thing. But with so many out of work, what if you can't afford to make that payment? NBC senior business correspondent Stephanie Rule joins us with everything we need to know. And we've got your questions right here. Stephanie, good morning. Okay, so let me start with Rita on Facebook. She wanted to know if there was any relief for rent. This is a big topic. We saw the words cancel the rent and floating around social media. Is there any relief for folks?
It's been emblazoned on the side of some office buildings in New York, cancel the rent. But I want people to understand, at least in New York, that's an activist group, an activist group trying to push for this. And we're hearing it across the country.
But on a federal, that means a national level, there's been no regulation changes. The federal government, their perspective is they're expanding unemployment, they're now giving those refund checks, and Americans who are in need should use that money to pay their essential bills like rent. Now, if you live in federally funded housing, there has been a 120-day freeze on evictions. You could go to the HUD website, but for most of us who have private landlords, the best you can really do is reach out to your landlord privately, see if there's some sort of relief program, see if you can get put on a payment plan, because there's nothing official that's happened across the country, at least not yet.
Okay, so another question, Steph, that we're getting a lot is who can and who cannot file for unemployment. This is a big one. So here's Lindsay from Instagram. Let's take a listen.
I wasn't collecting unemployment before coronavirus 19, but was unemployed. Am I now eligible for unemployment under the new coronavirus 19?
You hear this, bitch?
So can Lindsay collect?
She was on unemployment, and she's like, can I collect even though I'm still...
Is no. So the expanded unemployment is really to include anyone who's lost a part or...
Duh, you bitch. Like, this bitch is on unemployment, right? And then she's asking if she still could get more unemployment. She wants to get the 1,200. She's not trying to get the 600. I don't know how much the government gives her, but...
And the websites are down and you can't...
But how you gonna get unemployment if you didn't lose a job, baby?
I would recommend she should go to this new website that the Labor Department set up, careeronestop.org. That includes every single state out there. You're going to type in your state and see exactly what the parameters are. She would have needed to work at some point in this base period to apply and receive those unemployment benefits.
Okay, I want to get one in from Mary on Facebook. Let's roll it.
My husband and I are self-employed with no employees. Do we qualify for unemployment?
How about it, Stephanie?
You know I love good news. The answer is yes. The Careers Act has expanded unemployment benefits to people who are self-employed, freelance workers, gig economy workers. So there's a yes to that, and it might actually be a double. Because they run a small business, they may be eligible for something called the Paycheck Protection Program. That is a loan, a 100% forgivable short-term loan that the government is offering small businesses if they keep all of their employees on the payroll. In Mary's case, it's she and her husband on the payroll, so there's a chance they may get that loan, which turns out to be a grant.
Okay.
She needs to call her bank.
Okay, Stephanie, thank you. We've got a lot of questions. We'll get more of them coming in. Also, Facebook and Instagram, if you use the hashtag #WithYouToday and post your question, we'll find it for you.
Tonight, a crushing blow for an American icon already struggling in the .com era. With all stores closed at Q Sales, Macy's says it's furloughing most of its 130,000 employees. The pandemic hitting companies big and small. Michael Levy owns a printing press franchise on Long Island with 3 employees. Sales are down 95% and the bills are coming due.
It's really scary because my rent is due this week. I have payroll this week. And all my leases on my equipment are also due.
To help keep companies afloat and Americans employed, the Paycheck Protection Program enables small business owners to apply for a loan that could be entirely forgiven if the money is used for expenses like employee payroll and monthly payments. If a company can prove it kept 100% of its workforce by doing that, the entire loan would be forgiven. If there are some layoffs, the amount forgiven would be determined by how much of the workforce is kept on. But in Lynchburg, Virginia, Mallory Hill is urgently seeking unemployment benefits and Medicaid after being laid off last week as a contracted school counselor.
I own a house. I'm a single mom. And so my fear is I'm the only income. And how am I going to provide for my child?
If you're in trouble, money experts say now is the time to preserve cash, make the minimum payments on credit cards, ask creditors for leniency, including medical and dental bills if necessary, and focus on paying the bills you must.
So we need to keep food on the table. We need to keep the lights on and the heat in the house. We need to pay for healthcare because healthcare has never been more important.
For renters, many cities and states are prohibiting evictions, and homeowners with federally backed loans are protected from foreclosure for now. Daniel Kramer is facing mounting bills after being forced to lay off almost all of his 175 employees at 4 Washington, D.C. restaurants. Tonight, he's defiant.
We don't have a backup plan, and our goal is to rehire every single employee, and that's what we're going to do.
Never before have Americans been thrown out of work so quickly and in such great numbers, with no indication when they'll be able to return.
I'm Stephanie Rule. I am with you today, and today specifically, we're talking all about the government's new economic relief bill. The biggest question I'm getting is, how do I get these direct payments? You've heard about them, $1,200 to any American making less than $75,000 a year. Now, in order to get it, you need to file your taxes, either in 2018 or 2019. But let's say you've never filed your taxes before. I promised you, I'm going to talk you through how to do it. So if you don't have access to a computer, you can file on paper to do it all on your own, old school style. It's not going to cost you a cent, but it can be really complicated. So if you have questions, you can go to irs.gov to find answers. You can also use a software program, either paid for or free. Companies like TurboTax or TaxSlayer or H&R Block, they all offer different versions of the software. But the reason I'm talking about this today is because most often, the poorest Americans don't file their taxes. They say, I don't make enough money, what's the difference? Well, you're gonna need to file your taxes to get that $1,200, but there's also another bonus. For a lot of those very same Americans, you're eligible for an earned income tax credit or a child tax credit. So you might get a refund in addition to that relief check. So let's say you cannot afford to hire TurboTax or H&R Block. If you can't afford it, you can go on the IRS's Free File program. About 70% of taxpayers are actually eligible. Free File offers tax help for anyone with gross adjusted income of $69,000 or less. If you're not sure if you qualify, go to irs.gov and search Free File to check their income and other requirements. Now that we know how to file, what documents do you need? The most important documents you need are your W-2 form or your 1099 form. That depends on what your employment situation is. W-2 forms come from a full-time employer. 1099s are for people who receive at least $600 from anybody other than a full-time employer. There are also 1099s for people who are unemployed. No matter what forms you have, you're also going to need your Social Security number. And the sooner you file, the sooner you are going to get that rebate check, the sooner you're going to position yourself to get that $1,200 from the government. And I want you to make sure you sign up for direct deposit on irs.gov. That is the quickest way to get that money. So let's say you have done all of that. You have filed your taxes online, you've created the direct deposit. Once you file, you can track your return with the IRS website using their Where's My Refund tool. And the IRS updates it daily. So now, let's just go through this one more time. You are eligible for the $1,200. We still don't know when we're going to get it, but Secretary Mnuchin said most likely within 3 weeks of the president signing it. So expect $75,000 or less, $1,200 plus $500 for every child that you have, and that amount goes down until you hit $99,000. First things first, you gotta file those taxes.
File those taxes, big guys.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Let's get some breaking news now that I didn't know I had 4 people live in this bitch. My bad.
It's 1 o'clock. News Now.
Oh, we only got 2. They all leaving. Oh, wow. Let's see. 756 new cases in Pennsylvania. Cuomo unemployment line got 1.2 million calls last week. Usually 50,000 calls. 2,434 full SARS-CoV genomes now, GSA said, sorting as 3 claws plus others. S-claw 565 genomes. G-blade, I don't know, oh, none of that, 1,064. V-clade 230. Other clays 575. North America is S-clade. Europe, North, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. I can't read that. Stormy, get out of people's face. Get out, 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 get out. Go to the balcony. Go to the balcony. You like to bad vice. Some bad vice. No, I'm good. Thank you. Get out of people's face. Get. Okay. It's good. It's gonna be such a strange Black Mirror world when people who have COVID, and are immune can go out, work, while others must social distance. You know, employers will mandate must be COVID positive for jobs. An immune superclass with better access to the economy. Italy, 800 deaths today. Spain, 900 deaths today. USA, 500 deaths. New York City had 200 of those deaths. France, 400 deaths today. Yes, like flu season. Please go on. A huge group of innovators are sharing ideas on open source COVID-19 medical supplies. Group has grown 50,000 people in 2 weeks. From Ireland to Seattle, makers and engineers are creating open source It's time to make your own mask, according to the New York Times. From Ireland to Seattle, makers and engineers are creating open source version of much needed medical equipment in just over 2 weeks. Time for another thread of people being awesome. You occasionally round up selfless act and real good stories. Police officers in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, will visit kids on their birthdays in lieu of a big party, flash their lights, play happy birthday on the loud sound speakers, and hand no contact percent. This is the right thing. PayPal is the latest company to take a no coronavirus layoff pledge. They will deserve a retweet for that. Namaste. If you're on roll, I don't know what's that. Not a good Russian stability if Putin gets sick. This photo was taken last Wednesday when Putin visited a Moscow main coronavirus hospital. Since then, Denis Prochaska, the head doctor the head doctor on the left, taken with him, has tested positive for coronavirus. Oh, alert, alert, alert. Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. Let me put this in the thing. Breaking news. Vladimir Putin Russian leader Vladimir Putin So, breaking news: Russian leader Vladimir Putin could be seen shaking hands last Wednesday with Denis Prosecco, the head doctor of a COVID-19 hospital. So the Kremlin describe. Oh, we are listening to the governor of New Jersey. Governor of New Jersey.
As humanly possible. Let's all stay in this together. Let's prevent more losses like Israel and Ben and other blessed souls who have lost their lives. If we do our part, we can meaningfully slow the spread and save lives, and we can lessen the strain at the same time on our healthcare system and on our communities. And as we always do, we thank everyone on the front lines, especially the unsung and overlooked heroes who are out there
but let's
working
also
in our
help them.
communities.
And how do we help them? We help them by staying home and doing our part to slow the spread of COVID-19.
But how about the home
This
health
isn't about
aides,
you.
sanitation
It's
workers,
about us.
the retail
I've said it
employees,
many
essential
times.
places of business.
I know this isn't fun,
the
but now is
Teamsters
the
and the
time
truck drivers
to
and
be
the transit
selfless,
workers.
not selfish.
Their commitment
And
and
for all of
dedication
us
to the rest
pull
of us
together,
means
we
the world,
accept it.
and it means that we know we will emerge from this stronger.
About you,
But let's also
it's
help
about
them.
us.
And how do we help
I've
them?
said it many
We help them by
times,
staying
accept
home
and
and doing
understand the
our part to
anxiety,
slow the
the
spread
cabin fever,
of
the
COVID-19.
impatience, the
This isn't about
restlessness.
you, it's about us. I've said it many times, I know this isn't fun, but now is the time
The
to be
unknowns,
selfless,
we get
not
all that.
selfish.
The very
And for
best
all
thing
of
we
us
can do
to
together.
pull
And by the way, we'll shoot
accept and
straight with you
understand the anxiety, the cabin fever, the impatience, the
on what the facts are,
restlessness,
where we are,
the
and where we're
unknowns.
headed.
We get
The
all
very
that.
best,
The very
far
best
and away
thing we
thing
can
any
do
of us
together.
can do.
And by the way, we'll shoot straight with you on what the facts are,
From
where we
anybody
are,
else.
and where we're headed. But the very best far and away thing any of us can do
Even while
is to
you're
stay home and keep your distance
Okay, with that
from
said,
anybody else.
please
even
allow
while
me to
you're at home.
switch gears a couple of times before
Okay,
I
with that said,
ask
please allow me to switch
invite
gears
my
a couple of
colleagues
times
to
before I
speak.
ask
Tomorrow,
invite
Wednesday,
my colleagues to speak.
April 1st,
Tomorrow, Wednesday,
the PNC
April
Bank
1st,
Arts Center drive-through
the PNC
site,
Bank Arts Center
operating in
drive-through site,
partnership with FEMA,
operating
will
in
open at
partnership with FEMA,
8
will open
a.m.
at 8
again for
a.m.
symptomatic
again for
New Jersey
symptomatic New
residents
Jersey residents only.
The Bergen County Community
Community
College
County,
testing site
testing site
will be closed tomorrow. Again, we're in an on-off, hoping
to accomplish the same amount of tests in aggregate, but to do it in a more coherent way. Additionally, 3 more county-sponsored sites either have or are preparing to open, and I'll go north to south. I've been in touch with each of them, and it's all good news as we continue to aggressively open up our testing regime again for symptomatic persons. In a perfect world, the federal government would give us all the testing material we need, all the personal protective equipment that we need, and we could be like South Korea. From moment one, we realized that wasn't the case. We didn't have that level of material and support from the federal government. So we made the decision, for obvious personal health reasons, to test symptomatic people only. And by the way, that has an added benefit to the colleagues to my right, because that's the most valuable data we can get, both positives and negatives, and Judy will go through both in a minute. That allows us to best get our arms around this and get out ahead of it. So, starting tomorrow, Middlesex County, in partnership with the New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commission, is opening a drive-through site located at the MVC's Kilmer Vehicle Inspection Center in Edison. That site will be open 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Testing there is by appointment only, and you must be both a Middlesex County resident and exhibiting symptoms of respiratory illness. The appointment window is now open, and you can find more information at middlesexcountynj.gov/COVID-19 testing. Again, that's middlesexcountynj.gov/COVID-19 testing, or you can call 732-745